for what to do when you're so worried about your children. And the children that I'm speaking about in this context are way into their teens and maybe into their early adulthood. This perspective of really wanting them to launch into life in a good way. Now, the things that we're going to talk about are really at that zone of life. Of course, we would approach things differently when our children are, say, 12 and under, and really needing our support and our dedication and our love and attunement. And something changes in that perspective of parental care when our kids step out into their own paths. Perhaps they have their own children, choosing their own educational path, and yet we are stuck in a place of concern or worry. I think sometimes we can be so consumed with our worry, our concern, our thoughts that this shouldn't be happening the way that it is, that we might forget to look at the situation from a systemic perspective, which includes all parts. So we look at our teen or our young adult, and we want to also include our own patterns, our own unresolved stuff, our own hurts, as well as their other parent, to start to look at what's unresolved there or between the two of us. Those are the first places to start to look. And kind of you want to take some of the pressure off of yourself and start to look from a place of curiosity. What might be repeating? What things that I maybe judged or felt hurt most by their other parent, might I see living out again inside of my child's choices, behaviors, stuck points, even addiction patterns? And so you want to become a little bit like your own family detective. You start to get curious about the things that have you stuck in repetitive patterns or have you stuck in worry around them. To start to get curious of where that came from. The greatest movement that we can have to support our grown children is the work that we do on ourselves. The work that we can do to come to a place of neutral, come to a place of understanding with their other parent. This creates like a lift, all of the weight off of their shoulders so that they're not carrying what's ours. This is sort of systemic principle number one, that our children carry what's unresolved in us. And for many of you that I've already worked with, this is the one of the driving forces as why you reach out to do this work in the first place. Yes, of course, to lighten your own life circumstance and to feel better in life, but also that deeper perspective of it's the greatest gift that we can give our kids. And we really look to understand epigenetics, and we can understand the ripple effect includes our grandchildren as well. So that's the first thing to consider. The second is the importance of us staying in the role of parents, the natural order of a family system that parents give and children receive. And so, what is interesting that we rarely think about is that when parents are stuck inside of a excessively worrying situation, the overtone is that the child might feel controlled on their path. And so we invert something in that order of love where while we're trying to carry the worry, the dysfunction, the challenge of the child. And this ends up creating an entanglement. And so the child will naturally push back, will feel maybe weighted under the parent's expectation. And so, a really big principle within this body of work is your child has their own destiny, their own path, their own fate. And they must be able to live their own life instead of the one you wish for them. And so just notice what happens in your body when you start to feel like, my grown child has their own path. And of course, it would be different from mine. And it allows us to approach how we support them, and maybe most importantly, how we even think about where they're at, what they're doing from a different place. And so sometimes it's a new thought to consider that you're not responsible for your child's happiness or their success. The best thing that you can do is to sort of firmly plant into this place of loving mother, committed father, offering that love without overreaching. The truth is interfering which is often, under the guise of helping and supporting, ends up weakening them instead of strengthening them. And of course, that's the opposite of what you're trying to do. So that first curiosity that we want to look at is what might be mine, what might be their other parent, what might be something that's happened between us as a couple that is playing out in my child's life experience, in their behaviors, where they're stuck, where they're challenged, what might be on repeat. That's the first curiosity to start to consider when you're looking at the concern you have for your adult child. The second piece is that you staying in your role as parent, you recognizing that you're not responsible for their happiness, for their pain, or their success, and that you want to strengthen them, of course. And so interfering, helping, can end up weakening them instead. The third thing that we're going to look at is that if we are in a space of constantly worrying about our teen or adult child, it's almost as if it sends out this hidden message, as if it would say something like, I don't really believe you're strong enough. I can't trust you to figure this out. And so unconsciously, and maybe even rightfully so, your adult child will sort of keep you at an arm's length, will absolutely resist guidance. And alternatively, they may stay in this place of sort of feeling incapable, in this place of feeling a bit lost, perhaps even dependent on the circumstance. And of course, that's not what you're trying to do at all. And trust is an act of giving. Give your child the gift of trust. And so what does that mean practically in the everyday moments when you're sort of maybe thinking, well, there's good reason to be worried. How do I do that, And so what if your position was, okay, there's that worry, and I'm choosing to stand behind them in my inner image with the quiet confidence, with this energetic shift, the feeling of I must save them or I've got to help them figure it out, to standing strong in I trust them to find their way. So for a moment, just feel that in your body. Feel the difference between, I've got to find a way to save them. I've got to find a way to make this better, easier, lighter for them. Versus, I trust them to find their way. So what would happen if you let them find their own strength instead of jumping to fix or repair things? The awareness here that somewhere along the line, and it's a little different for each child, but we sort of are in that position where we're not really a parent from the perspective of, here's what you should do. Here's the study habits I'd like you to have. Here's what healthy eating looks like. Perhaps that ends somewhere around 16, 18, that our child has developed this inner space of the style of studying that works for them, or the way of eating that they're going to try on for a time. And we're in a different perspective. I think this is a very limited topic that people explore. The change that happens from active parent to this sort of supportive parent to the mature teen or to the young adult. And so we still love them absolutely, beyond words. And yet there's this space of honoring their independence and honoring their path. And how does that change that style of parenting, that very approach? The fourth consideration that is often unknown and untalked about is our children will carry what's hurtful and broken in us if we let them. Because of the deep love a child has for their parent, they will unconsciously take on what's unresolved. So, our guilt, our unfulfilled dreams, our mistakes, our hurts, all of it. And so, if a parent lives their life in this deeply worried state, the teen or the young adult can carry that worry as a part of this is just who I am. I'm an anxious or worried person. Seemingly, in a similar way, if the parent is unhappy in their own life, the child will limit their ability to their own happiness. And so in our work, it's so common, we call it a speed limit, the family speed limit. So if I'm only, let's say, 45% happy, my child will, even though they're 25 years old, may unconsciously feel, who am I to be 100% happy? My family speed limit was 45 miles per hour happy. And so there's a way of sort of bringing yourself down to that same level of unhappiness, depression, anxiety, struggle. It's highly unconscious, of course, but it's the way that your young adult stays loyal to the family system. So there's been all kinds of other research studies out there that the predictor of our child's success out there in the world as an adult is actually the amount of happiness that can be expressed within mom. So how happy, how at peace, what level of self-acceptance does mom have is a primary determinant of the child as they grow into adulthood, their success. And so as a parent, that puts us kind of squarely in this place of the best place I can be to love my kids and launch them into life really well is to look at your own unresolved fears, your own life disappointments, your own worries, and how they might take hold and lead the way. Another really big and important one is releasing our grown kids from any hidden expectations. I can't tell you how many times I hear this in cases where the person is now in their 40s, 50s, or 60s going, I had to succeed because my father failed. And my mother drilled it into me that you will be nothing like your father. And so there's this hidden expectation of who I need to be out there in the world in order to not let my mom down, in order to not be anything like my dad. And so we've all got elements of this sort of somewhere sitting in the background of our psyche. And so the best gift we can give our kids is to not put that on them. And sometimes it can be a very straightforward, direct sentence. I will carry what's mine, and you are free to go your own way. Sometimes saying things in your own mindset to clear the invisible connection between you and your child. Things like what went on between your father and I, that remains personal and private to us. This has nothing to do with you. We want to be able to have the intention of setting our children free. The one of the primary areas to look at too is that I think as parents, we're taught to believe the more we do, the better they will be. The more we can help, the better off they'll be. And really, what we've seen in observation of this trend is that too much intervention, too much helping weakens the child instead of empowering them. And so, what if the best support a parent can be is to be available, but not to interfere? And It's wild to imagine, but sometimes it's the doing nothing that is the most loving act. And so, what if, as you think of your own circumstance, the resistance to fixing? I know I can speak from experience that I learned the most about myself and about life in the recovery from a broken heart, in the repairing of a big mistake, so that I'm learning in my own path instead of feeling rescued by a parent coming in and making it better. So, what could shift if you committed to become a quiet presence from that space of, I trust you'll figure it out in a way that works for you, instead of being an anxious force? And that includes things like in our thinking, oh, I hope they don't struggle with this circumstance or with this decision, or I hope they don't struggle with this breakup. And what if instead we thought, I trust that life will bring them what they need to grow? So again, we're looking at the difference of how that feels in your body. None of us want our children to struggle or suffer or be in pain. And so a thought might come up, I need to protect them from failure. And what if we intentionally move that thought to, I give them my blessing to experience life fully? The joys, the struggles, the pain, the disappointment, the resilience of rising after the challenge. And I think sometimes we can't help but observe this thing of, oh, they're just making one bad choice after the next. And what if our movement, again, that intentional pulling back and coming from that observer role, I trust that their path is unfolding exactly as it should. So the awareness that, and I guess if we were to wrap up this whole kind of concept, this place of, I gave them life, that is enough. And now I trust them to live it. And so we really come from this space of understanding that, and that includes your worry doesn't help. It actually holds them back. The awareness that trust is the most expansive and strong gift that you can give them. And it's far greater than any advice.